I want to tell you about the document. Not the deed to the farm in France. Not my husband's death certificate. Not the letter my attorney sent to both of my children on a Thursday morning in October. I want to tell you about the other document. The one my daughter, Susan, slid across my kitchen table. 11 days after we buried my husband, with a pen already uncapped, she had highlighted the signature line in velo. It was a power of attorney, comprehensive, permanent, covering my finances, my property, my medical decisions, my legal affairs, everything. She had already signed it herself as the designated agent. She just needed my signature to make it complete. She set the pen down on top of the highlighted line. "Mom," she said, "it's just paperwork. It's just to protect you." I looked at the document. I looked at the pen. I looked at my daughter, and I thought about the folder locked in Robert's study. The one with the French deed inside, the one with my name on it, only my name. I pushed the pen back across the table. "No." Susan blinked. "Mom, no." She had no idea what I already held. She had no idea what I had already decided, but she was about to find out. Let me take you back, to the beginning of this, to who I was before that morning, and what I had done while nobody was watching. My name is Dorothy Hargrove. I am 69 years old. I was born in Savannah, Georgia, in a yellow house on Jones, street that smelled of magnolia and old wood every summer without fail. My mother was a school teacher. My father ran a hardware store on the corner of Whitaker and Gaston for 37 years. He knew every customer by name. He knew which ones paid on time and which ones needed a little grace. He extended both equally. That was his philosophy. It became mine. I went to the University of Georgia, English literature, class of 1976. I was going to be a writer. I had been certain of it since I was 9 and had filled my first notebook with a story about a girl who sailed across the Atlantic to find a house that had been in her family for 200 years. I never became a writer. Not the published kind. I became something else instead, a wife, a mother, a registered nurse, a woman who kept a journal every morning before the house woke up, and who had 41 volumes of her own life lined up on the third shelf of her bedroom bookcase. I met Robert Hargrove at a party in Athens the spring of my junior year. He was a civil engineering student, quiet, careful with words, the kind of man who listened when you spoke and remembered what you said 3 weeks later. We married in 1978. Small ceremony, my mother's garden, magnolias in bloom. We built a life in Savannah. Robert designed bridges. I worked at Memorial Health for 31 years as a nurse. We bought a Victorian on Abercorn Street in 1984. 4 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, a garden that Robert tended on Saturday mornings with a devotion he gave to nothing else except me. We had 2 children. Susan came first, then William 3 years later. We were not wealthy. We were deliberate. Robert had a pension. I had a pension. My mother had left me a modest inheritance that I had invested quietly for 22 years without telling anyone, including Robert. Not out of secrecy, out of instinct. A woman's instinct developed over decades of watching what happened to women who had nothing of their own. I had something of my own. I kept it. Quietly. The way you keep a candle in a drawer for when the power goes out. I never imagined I would need it this way. But I kept it anyway. And when Robert was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in the spring of last year, one was glad. Not of the diagnosis. Never of that. But of the candle. Still there. Still mine. Waiting. Robert James Hargrove died on a Tuesday, September, early morning. The light in our bedroom was the particular gold of Georgia autumn that he had always said was the best light of the year. He had been at home for the last 6 weeks. Hospice. A nurse named Cecilia who came every morning and who had the gift of making clinical things feel human. I slept in our bed every night, even at the end, especially at the end. His last coherent conversation was about the garden. He was worried about the roses, whether I would remember to cut them back before first frost, whether the gardenias near the south wall would survive another summer. I told him I would take care of everything. He looked at me the way he had looked at me for 45 years. That particular look, the one that said, "I know you will. I have always known you would." He died at 6:14 in the morning. I was holding his hand. Cecilia was in the doorway. The room smelled of the lavender sachets. I had tucked into the pillowcase because it had always helped him sleep. I sat with him for an hour before I called anyone. That hour was mine, just mine. I want to tell you something about Robert that is important to this story. 6 months before he died, in March, he took my hand one evening while we were sitting on the porch. The garden was just beginning. The first jonquils. He said, "Dorothy, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." He said, always. He said, "When Lamb gone, what will you do? Not what will Susan want you to do. Not what will William expect. What will you do?" I looked at him. The jonquils, the porch light, his face. I said, "I am going to go somewhere. Somewhere I have been thinking about for a very long time." He nodded, once, slowly. "Good," he said, "good." He never asked where. I never told him. We had that between us. 45 years of trusting each other's silences. He signed everything over to me in March. Joint revocable trust. Everything in my name. Solely. He had done it, without my asking, because he knew what was coming. Not the cancer, the children. He knew Susan. He loved her. He knew exactly who she was. He had protected me in the only way he had left to protect me. With documents, with his signature, with the quiet engineering of a man who built things to last. I need to tell you about France, and why I went alone, and what I found there. My grandmother Rosalind was born in the Dordogne, a region in southwestern France that most Americans have never heard of and that the French consider one of the most beautiful places in the world. She came to Georgia at 19 years old with a young American soldier she had met at the end of the war. She spent the rest of her life in Savannah. She spoke English perfectly and French to herself when she thought no one was listening. She told me about the Dordogne when I was a child. The river, the limestone cliffs, the old stone farmhouses with their brown tile roofs and their thick walls that stayed cool in summer and warm in winter, the walnut orchards, the sunflowers in July, the particular quality of afternoon light that she said existed nowhere else on earth. She died when I was 14, but I had been carrying the Dordogne inside me ever since. When Robert was diagnosed in April, while he was still strong enough to be at home, while we still had weeks that looked almost normal, I made a decision. I told Robert I was going to visit my college friend Louise in Atlanta. 3 days. He smiled at me from his chair. Give Louise my love. I did not go to Atlanta. I flew to Bordeaux. I rented a car. I drove east into the Dordogne. I had been corresponding for 4 months with a property agency in a town called Sarlat. A woman named Colette who had the patience of a saint and the persistence of someone who believed in what she was selling. She showed me 7 properties over 2.5 days. The last one was a farmhouse outside the village of Baynac. 3 acres, a walnut orchard, a stone house from 1831, a kitchen with a fireplace large enough to stand in, a bedroom window that faced the river. I stood in that kitchen for 20 minutes without speaking. Colette stood in the doorway and did not rush me. When I finally turned to her, my grandmother's, French coming back to me in fragments and whole sentences. I had not known I remembered. I said, "C'est ici. It is here." I signed the papers on my second day via wire transfer from my private account. The account nobody knew about. My mother's inheritance. 22 years of careful growth. The deed was issued in my name. Only my name. Dorothy Ann Hargrove. I flew home to Robert. I brought him chocolates from Sarlat and told him Louise sent her love. He ate 2 chocolates and fell asleep in his chair. His breathing already beginning its slow change. I sat beside him and held his hand and thought, I have done it. It is done. Whatever comes next, it is done. I locked the deed in the bottom drawer of Robert's study, under a folder labeled insurance documents, where no one would look, where I would find it when I needed it, which turned out to be 11 days after we put Robert in the ground. I want to tell you about the letter. I wrote it the morning after I came home from France. Before I told Robert I was back, before I made breakfast, before anything, I sat at the kitchen table in the early morning light with my journal, and I wrote, "To whoever I am when Robert is gone, you did this. You bought this farm with your own money, your mother's money, your grandmother's country, your own courage. You did it because vous knew. You have always known. The moment Robert is gone, Susan will come. Not out of cruelty, out of fear, her own fear, dressed up as concern for you. She will want to manage vous. She will want to contain vous. She will want to put you somewhere small enough that she does not have to worry. Small enough that you fit inside her idea of what a widow is. You refused. You went to Grandmother Rosalind's country. You stood in a kitchen with a fireplace the size of a doorway. You said c'est ici, and you meant it. This is for you, only for you. The first thing in 45 years that belongs entirely to you. Do not apologize. Do not explain. Do not let them make you small. You owe your children your love. You have given it. You will keep giving it. You do not owe them your erasure. Go to France, Dorothy. Grandmother Rosalind is waiting. She has been waiting for 69 years. Do not make her wait any longer. With everything you have built, yourself. I folded the letter. I put it in the folder with the deed. I locked the drawer. And then I went upstairs and made Robert breakfast. Soft scrambled eggs. The way he liked them. With the chives from the garden. He ate every bite. It was one of his last good mornings. I have never once regretted writing that letter. Not for a single day. Susan Hargrove Whitfield is 44 years old. She lives in Charleston, South Carolina, in a house her husband, Brandon, bought at the top of the market in 2021. She is my daughter. I love her. I am telling you this first because I want you to understand that what I am about to tell you does not contradict it. Susan was a beautiful child, certain, quick, the kind of girl who organized her own birthday parties and corrected the other children's games. Her teachers called it leadership. I called it Susan. I paid for her education at Clemson. I paid for her wedding. When she and Brandon bought the house in Charleston and the mortgage was more than they could comfortably manage. Robert and I helped, quietly, without conditions. The way parents help when they have the means. What I did not anticipate, what perhaps I should have seen coming decades before I did, was that Susan had come to understand help as a permanent arrangement, not a gift, a supply line. She called me 11 days after Robert's funeral. I was standing at the kitchen sink, rinsing my coffee cup, looking at the garden Robert would never tend again. Mom. Good morning, Susan. We need to talk. We do? Brandon and I have been discussing the situation. The situation. As if grief were a logistics problem. As if I were a package awaiting routing instructions. The house is too much for you alone. We both know that. 4 bedrooms, all those stairs, that yard, and Daddy's medical bills. I don't even want to think about what you're dealing with financially. My finances are fine. Susan, Mom, her voice had that particular patience. That is not patience at all, but its opposite. Wearing Patience's clothing. Brandon knows a realtor. Excellent woman. She thinks we could list at 600 easily. That would be more than enough for you to move somewhere more manageable. There's a lovely community off Habersham Road. Walking paths. They have a pool. I let the silence stretch. Outside the window, a mockingbird landed on the shepherd's hook where Robert had always hung the summer flowers. The shepherd's hook was empty now. Just the metal curve of it in the September morning. Susan, you've spoken to a realtor about my house. About options. I've spoken about options. And honestly, Mom, if we could get 600 for the house, I mean, Brandon's restaurant has really been struggling since the pandemic and the kids. School is, there it was, the real sentence, dressed in 4 sentences of concern, but there, plain as the empty shepherd's hook. I thought about the folder in Robert's study. The deed. The letter had written to myself. He said, till think about it. Mom, I'll think about it, Susan. I'll call you Thursday. I hung up. I looked at the mockingbird. He was still there, completely unconcerned with real estate valuations and restaurant debt. Smart bird, I thought. Smart bird. Susan came in person 4 days after the phone call. She drove up from Charleston on a Thursday morning without calling first. I heard the car in the driveway, and I knew before. I opened the door that she had not come empty-handed. She had not. She came into the kitchen. She kissed my cheek. She set her bag on the table. She took out a folder. The folder was blue. The kind of blue that suggests seriousness. Formality. Official proceedings. She opened it. Set the document in front of me. Set the pen on top. The cap already removed. Mom, I've had this prepared. It's just a precaution. It's just to make sure that if anything happens, if you get sick or confused or you just need someone to handle things, I'm authorized to step in. It's what responsible families do. I did not touch the document. I did not touch the pen. Hooked at the highlighted line. The yellow of it. So careful. So prepared. How long have you been planning this? She blinked. Mom, I'm not. It's not a plan. It's just paperwork. How long, Susan? I've been talking to a lawyer for a few weeks. Since before the funeral. Since before the funeral. Let those 4 words sit on the table between us like a stone. She heard them. She pressed forward anyway. It's a durable power of attorney. It covers your finances, your property, your medical decisions. It's completely standard, is it? It's what the lawyer recommended. What lawyer? Gerald Ames. He's Brandon's attorney. He handles estate planning. Brandon's attorney. Drawing up documents concerning my finances, my property, my medical decisions, at my son-in-law's request, before my husband's funeral. I sat with all of that, the full weight of it, and I thought about Robert, standing at the lawyer's office in March, signing everything into my name solely, his hands on the pen, his hands that had always been steady. He had known. I looked at my daughter, at the woman I had raised, at the document she had prepared before she had even finished grieving her father, and I pushed the pen back across the table. No, Mom, no, please just read it. You haven't even— Susan, I am 69 years old. I am a registered nurse with 31 years of clinical experience. I have managed this household, these finances, and my own affairs for 45 years. I have buried my husband. I have not lost my mind. I am not confused. I will not be signing this document or any document like it. Not today, not next week, not at any point that you have decided upon without my involvement. She stared at me. Mom, I'm trying to help you. You are trying to manage me. There is a difference. Your father understood the difference. I hope you will come to understand it too. She picked up the document, put it back in the blue folder. Her jaw was set, the way it had set since she was 7 years old and losing an argument. She had been certain she would win. Fine, she said, fine, but when something happens— Susan, what? When I have something to tell you, and I do, you will hear it from me, in my own time, in my own way. She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time that morning. What does that mean? It means exactly what I said. Would you like coffee before you drive back? She would not. She left 20 minutes later, the blue folder under her arm, the pen capped. I watched her car back out of the driveway, down Abercorn Street, out of sight. Then I went to Robert's study, unlocked the drawer, took out the folder marked insurance documents, opened it. The deed was exactly where I had left it. My name in black ink, the Dordogne address, the coordinates of a kitchen with a fireplace the size of a doorway. I put the folder back, locked the drawer. Then I called my attorney, a woman named Patricia Osel, whom Robert had chosen 12 years earlier because— he said, she does not waste words. And I want someone who does not waste words looking after Vu. Patricia, I said, my daughter has had a power of attorney prepared by her husband's attorney. I need you to send her a letter, today if possible. A pause. Her husband's attorney. Patricia's voice was very flat. Before or after the funeral? Before. Another pause. I'll have it sent within the hour. Would you like copies to her husband as well? Yes, I said, please. My son William called that Sunday. William had always been different from Susan. Gentler, more given to uncertainty. He had become a landscape architect which suited him. A profession that required patience with slow things, faith that what you planted would eventually bloom. He lived in Asheville, North Carolina, with his wife Renee and their twin daughters Maeve and Clara, who were 11 years old and who called me Grandma. Dot and who sent me drawings in the actual mail. Mom. Hello, sweetheart. How are you doing? I mean, really. I'm doing. That was honest, at least. Susan called me. Of course she did. She said you refused to sign. That is correct. He was quiet. The particular quiet of a man deciding whether to be honest or diplomatic. William had always chosen honesty. It was his best quality. Good, he said. I did not expect that. Mom, I told her before she even drafted it that it was a bad idea. She doesn't listen to me either. She doesn't listen to anyone. She listens to Brandon. Brandon tells her what she wants to hear. That's different. Mom, are you okay? Not with Susan, with you. The real answer. I thought about the question. The real answer. I'm going to France, William. Silence. Sorry? Loan a property there, in the Dordogne. A farmhouse. 3 acres. A walnut orchard. I bought it in April, with my own money. I am flying out of Savannah next Wednesday morning. The silence that followed was the longest silence my son had ever given me. When he spoke again, his voice had changed entirely. Grandma Rosalind's country. Yes, you bought a farm in Grandma Rosalind's country. Outside Baynack, near the river, he laughed. Not an unkind laugh, a real one. Surprised, and something else. Something that sounded almost like recognition. Did Dad know? He knew I was going somewhere. He didn't ask where. That sounds exactly like Dad. It does. Mom, he said it again, more quietly. I'm sorry I didn't come more. When he was sick, the girls' school schedules, the commute from Asheville. I know those are excuses. I know they are. They are, I said. And they are also real. Both things are true. I'm not keeping score, William. I never kept score. Can I bring the girls to visit? When you're settled, they would lose their minds. I would like that very much. After we hung up, I stood at the kitchen window for a long time. The mockingbird was back, or a different mockingbird. It was impossible to tell. That is the thing about certain kinds of presents. You do not always know if it is the same one returning or a new one who simply knows the territory. Either way, there was a bird on the shepherd's hook. And the hook was no longer empty. And that was enough. Susan came back on Monday, 2 days before my flight. This time she called first, which I took as a minor improvement. She arrived at 10 in the morning. Without Brandon, without a folder, without a pen, she stood in my kitchen in the clothes she always wore when she was trying to appear reasonable. Dark jeans, a silk blouse, the pearl earrings I had given her for her 30th birthday. Mom, I've been thinking. So have I. Sit down, Susan. She sat. I did not. I have something to tell you. I want you to hear all of it before you respond. Can you do that for me? She nodded. On Wednesday morning, I am flying to Bordeaux, France. From there, I will drive to the Dordogne, a region in the southwest, where I own a property I purchased in April. A stone farmhouse, 3 acres, a walnut orchard, built in 1831. I bought it with the inheritance your grandmother left me, which I invested for 22 years. Your father knew I was going somewhere. He did not know where. That was our arrangement. Susan's face had gone very still. The house here will not be sold. Not while I'm alive. It will be rented through a management company to a family who needs it. The income from that rental will go into my account. My account. Patricia Osey has prepared documents formalizing all of this. Copies have been sent to you and William. The deed to the French property is in my name only. Everything your father signed over to me is in my name only. You have no legal access to any of it. You have never had legal access to any of it. I want that to be very clear. Susan opened her mouth. I am not finished. She closed it. The power of attorney you had prepared, by your husband's attorney, before your father's funeral, was not a precaution. It was an attempt to take control of my life while I was still inside it. I will not pretend I don't know that, and I will not pretend it didn't hurt me. Because it did, deeply. Susan's eyes were wet. I am your mother. I'm not your financial solution. I am not Brandon's restaurant's investor. I am not the answer to choices you have made that have nothing to do with me. She was crying now, quietly, the way she had cried as a child, trying not to. Losing the battle. Mom, I am not finished. She went quiet. I love you. That is not in question. It has never been in question. But love does not mean I dissolve myself so that you have more room. I have made a life. A real one. For 69 years, and I intend to keep making it. On my own terms, in my grandmother's country. In a kitchen with a fireplace the size of a doorway. You are welcome to visit. When you are ready. When a visit means coming to see me, and not to convince me to be someone smaller. I poured 2 cups of coffee. Set one in front of her. Sat down across from her. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, Susan said, very quietly, I didn't know about Grandma Rosalind. That it was her country. She used to tell me about it when I was sick as a girl. She would sit by my bed and describe the river and the walnut trees and the light. Susan looked at her coffee. She didn't tell me those stories. No, I said. She told them to me, and I kept them. The way you keep things that belong to you. She nodded, once, slowly. She did not apologize. Not that morning. But something in her face had shifted. Something had rearranged itself. Something that looked like the beginning of understanding a lesson she was not finished learning. She left an hour later. She paused at the door, her back to me. Will you write? Every week, I said. She nodded. Walked to her car. Drove away. I stood at the door until she turned the corner, then went inside and finished packing. I left Savannah on a Wednesday morning in October. The sky was that particular Georgia blue that only exists in autumn, the kind of blue that looks painted, too deliberate to be accidental. I had arranged for a neighbor, a young woman named Delia, who had helped me through the last weeks of Robert's illness, to water the indoor plants and collect the mail and keep an eve on the garden until the management company had a tenant in place. I had packed 2 suitcases, practical things, and Robert's flannel shirt, the dark green one. He had worn on every camping trip we had ever taken, folded into the top of the second case. I had also packed 41 journals, everyone, shipped ahead by freight, already waiting for me in the Dordogne. My own life, in my own handwriting, 41 volumes, going home with me. I locked the front door of the Victorian on Abercorn Street, stood on the porch for one long moment, the garden, the magnolia, the empty shepherd's hook. I thought about Robert, the way he had looked at me from his chair on the porch. Good, Dorothy, good. I picked up my bag. I walked to the cab. I did not look back, not because it did not hurt, because it did, because some things hurt and you walk toward them anyway, because the alternative is standing still forever out of grief. The plane lifted through the Georgia clouds and broke into sunlight. I pressed my forehead against the window, watched the coastline fall away. I thought about the girl who had wanted to be a writer, who had filled notebooks since she was 9, who had wanted to see the world. She was still there. She had always been there, underneath everything, patient as a garden, waiting for the right season. This was the season. I was 69 years old, and this was the season. Bordeaux smelled of the Atlantic and warm stone and something I could only call a rival. Colette met me at the airport. She was smaller than I remembered, or perhaps I was larger. Something had expanded in me on the plane. Some room I had not known was closed. She drove me east in a small car that knew the roads by heart. The land changed around us, vineyard, river, limestone cliff, the particular amber of the rock in afternoon light. Then the Dordogne Valley, and the farmhouse. It was exactly as I remembered. Brown tile roof, stone walls, blue shutters the color of the morning sky and a child's drawing. Colette had stocked the pantry. Bread on the counter, a pot of local honey, a bottle of Bergerac wine, a note from her mother in careful English. Welcome home, Madame Hargrove. The walnut trees are yours now. Take good care of them. They are older than any of us. I stood in the kitchen. The fireplace, the copper pots, the window facing east where the morning light would come. I set Robert's flannel shirt on the back of the kitchen chair, the one at the head of the table, so he would have a seat. I slept for 12 hours, the deepest sleep I had had in a year. The days arranged themselves around small and sufficient things. Walking into the village for bread, learning the names of my neighbors, an elderly man named Edward, who kept bees on the hill and who brought me a jar of honey on my 3rd morning and then taught me to say the French names for clouds. A young couple named Felix and Margot who ran the Saturday market and who began saving me the best of the walnut bread before I had even asked. I wrote letters, one every week to William, one every week to Susan, which she did not answer at first, but which I kept writing anyway, because they were not for her answers. They were for the record. I wanted there to be a record in my own handwriting of a mother who had not given up. I wrote in my journal every morning. Before anything else, the 42nd volume, a new one, bought in the village stationery shop. Dark green cover, the color of Robert's flannel shirt. I was not lonely. I want to be clear about that, because people assume. They hear widow and farmhouse and France, and they assume lonely. I was not lonely. I was full. For the first time in a very long time, I was full in a way that did not depend on anyone else filling me. William brought the girls in December. He drove up from Bordeaux Airport in a rented car. I heard the wheels on the gravel before I heard the doors. Maeve came out first. She was carrying a drawing rolled in her fist. Clara was behind her, already asking in her carrying voice, "Grandma Dot, are those the walnut trees? Are those the real ones?" "Yes, sweetheart. Those are the real ones." She sprinted toward them. Maeve handed me the drawing first. It was a picture of the farmhouse. Crayon. The blue shutters rendered in approximate crayon blue. A figure in the doorway, labeled in Maeve's careful printing, Grandma Dot's house. I held it for a long moment. Then I put my arm around her and we went inside. William stood in the kitchen doorway, looking at Robert's flannel shirt on the chair. He did not say anything. He did not need to. I made lunch. Walnut salad. Bread from Felix and Margot. Edward's honey on the side. William ate and looked around the kitchen. The fireplace. The copper pots. The eastern window. He said, "Mom." Yes. Dad was right. About what? About you. He always said, "Your mother is the most capable person I have ever known." I never quite understood what he meant. He looked at the kitchen, at the walnut trees through the window, at Maeve's drawing already pinned to the wall beside the fireplace. I understand now. I covered his hand with mine, the way mothers do, the way I had done since he was 3 years old and afraid of the dark. Outside, Clara was speaking French to the walnut trees. The French was not correct. The trees did not seem to mind. I thought, this is what I built it for. Not the deed, not the trust, not the documents. This, a kitchen in my grandmother's country. My son's hand under mine, my granddaughter speaking her great-great-grandmother's language to the walnut trees. This. Susan's first letter arrived in February. Not an email. A letter, handwritten, which surprised me. Susan had not written by hand since she was a child. It was 4 pages. She did not ask for anything. She was clear about that in the first sentence. She was not writing to negotiate. She was not writing to revisit any of the practical matters. She was writing because she had started seeing a therapist in January, and her therapist had asked her to write a letter to someone she had wronged. She had sat down to write one letter. She had filled 4 pages. She wrote about the power of attorney, about how she had told herself it was protection, how she had told Brandon it was protection, how she had almost convinced herself. She wrote about the restaurant, about how much money they owed, about how frightened she had been, about how fear had dressed itself as practicality and practicality as concern, and concern as love until she couldn't tell any of them apart more. She wrote about her father, about how she had not let herself properly grieve him because grieving meant stopping, and stopping meant feeling everything she had not wanted to feel. She wrote, "I think I was trying to control you because I could not control losing him. I know that is not an excuse. It is just the truth. And my therapist says the truth is a better place to start than any of the other places. I've been starting." She wrote about Grandma Rosalind. She wrote, "Mom told me about the stories, about France, about the light. I think I understand now why you never told me. You were keeping something for the girl you had been before. Vous were Anvona's mother. I think I would have taken that from you without meaning to. I think I almost did." She closed the letter with 3 sentences. "I'm sorry. I don't know it. You will forgive me. I know I don't get to decide that." I read the letter 3 times, walked to the eastern window, the walnut trees in their February stillness, the river in the distance. I thought about the little girl who had organized her own birthday parties, who had always needed to win, who had never quite learned that some things are not competitions. Picked up my pen, wrote 4 paragraphs. I told her I had received her letter. I had read it carefully, several times. It told her that forgiveness was not something I had decided yet, that it was not a light switch, that it was something I was working toward in the same quiet way I was working toward everything else. Here, slowly, with attention, without forcing it. I told her the lavender from my neighbor's field smelled like her grandmother. Rosalind's handkerchief, the one she kept in her sleeve. I don't know if you remember that, but I thought you should know. I told her the farmhouse had a guest room, with a window that faced the river. When she was ready, not to fix anything, not to discuss anything practical, simply to come. She was welcome. I signed it Mom, not Dorothy, not Mrs. Hargrove, Mom. Because whatever else she had done, she was still my daughter. And some threads do not break, even when they should, even when they have been pulled as hard as ours had been pulled. They stretch, they thin, they hold. It is spring now. The walnut trees have their first leaves, small, lime green, the color of something just deciding to exist. Edouard brought me the first honey of the season this morning. We sat on my stone step and drank coffee, and he told me about the bees, about how they know things that people have to learn. I am learning, still, every day. Susan has not visited yet. We write letters, 1 every 2 weeks. They are getting longer, more honest, less careful. William is bringing the girls again in July. Clara has requested to help Edward with the bees. Edward has said yes. He said children and bees understand each other. I believe him. I want to tell you something before I finish. If you are watching this and you are a woman who has given everything, for a very long time, to a marriage, to children, to a job, to a family that needed more than it gave. I want Vo to hear this from someone who is on the other side of it. There is still time. Not infinite time. Not the time you had at 23. Different time. Particular time. The kind that comes when the long obligation is over and what remains is only you. You are not a burden. You are not a bank. You are not the solution to problems you did not create. You are a woman with a life still inside her, with stories still unwritten, with countries still unvisited, with kitchens still unfound that have your name on them already. The document my daughter brought to my kitchen table 11 days after my husband's funeral, the one with the highlighted signature, line and the uncapped pen, was not a protection. It was a presumption. The presumption that grief makes a woman small. That loss makes her manageable. That age makes her available for management. I am 69 years old. I am a registered nurse. I have buried my husband. I have raised my children. I have paid my debts. I have kept my promises. I have also bought a farm in my grandmother's country, with my own money, in my own name, without asking anyone's permission. And every morning, I wake up in a stone farmhouse with a fireplace, the size of a doorway and a window facing east and the smell of walnuts coming in on the air, and I make coffee. And I open my journal, the 42nd volume, dark green cover, and I write. The way I always wanted to. It is not too late. I promise you, it is never too late. My grandmother, Rosalind, used to say, the river does not ask permission to reach the sea. It simply goes. Go, simply go. Whatever your river is, wherever your sea, go.